Have you ever noticed how we talk about single mothers and single fathers? It's like a reading from two completely different scripts. For one, it's often a story of sacrifice, and for the other, a story of heroism. Today, we're going to dive into this hidden bias, what we're calling the single-parent attribution gap. So let's just get right to the heart of it. Why do we look at the exact same situation, one parent raising a child, and assign two totally different meanings to it? The word single just carries a different weight depending on who we're talking about. And figuring out why, well, that tells us a whole lot about our own unconscious judgments. And hey, just for a second, let's take parenting out of the equation. Think about it. We hear about a single woman in her 30s, and the story often leans towards what might be wrong, right? She's unlucky, or maybe even too independent. But a single guy the same age, oh, he's career-focused, he's still eligible, just weighing his options, totally in control. Now, this same exact logic gets cranked up to 100 when kids are involved. Okay, so this leads us right into our first big idea, this hidden moral lens we use to judge people. We're going to explore how singlehood, especially for women, gets framed as some kind of deficiency, like it's something that needs an explanation or a justification, instead of just being, well, a fact of life. Society loves a simple story. For a single woman, the default narrative is often passive. She was left, or she somehow failed to keep the family unit together. But for a man, the story is usually active. He chose freedom, or he was struck by some terrible tragedy that he now has to bravely overcome. It's the same reality, just framed in completely different ways. Now, this difference in storytelling, it actually has a name. It's what psychologists call the attribution gap. And really, it's the core concept we're unpacking today. It's all about how we explain why someone is in the situation they're in. So at the heart of this attribution gap is this little psychological quirk called attribution bias. And when you apply it to single parents, it works kind of like this. For a woman, we're way quicker to look for what she did wrong, for her personal flaws. But for a man, we tend to look for external reasons, what happened to him. And this is where it gets really fascinating, because this bias operates on two levels. There's what we say out loud, and then there's what we unconsciously feel. Consciously, we might say things that sound sympathetic for both, like, oh, she must have been abandoned, or poor guy, fate was so cruel. But underneath all that, the feeling is different. For single moms, there's often this layer of scrutiny, a bit of suspicion. For single dads, it's a wave of sympathy and what you might call social permission to be in that role. So this isn't just some abstract theory, right? This bias has a real, tangible impact on the day-to-day lives of single parents. Let's actually take a look at how this plays out in the real world. Okay, picture this super common scenario. A single mom goes to a parent-teacher meeting. The teacher asks, is the father not involved at all? Now that's not just a question, is it? It's loaded. The implication is that something is missing, that this family is somehow incomplete. It's immediately framed as a deficit. Now let's put a single father in that exact same chair. The teacher's reaction? It's often praise. Wow, it's so wonderful you make the time for this. It's the exact same action, one parent showing up for their kid, but it's interpreted in two completely opposite ways. This is the bias in action right there. One is a problem to be noted, the other is an act of devotion to be celebrated. And this just extends everywhere. At work, a single mom who needs a little flexibility might be seen as less committed. A single dad in the same boat, he's a hero, juggling it all. With family, she might get endless interference and judgment, while he gets a flood of maybe even too much help. The very same institutions, work, family, schools, are applying two totally different standards. All right, let's shift gears and look at the actual data, specifically from India, to see just how big this issue is. Because the numbers, well, they really do tell their own story. So as you can see, in India, about 8.2% of households are run by single mothers. Compare that to just 2.3% for single fathers. That massive difference means single mothers are just way more visible, and because of that, they face so much more scrutiny from society. It's just easier to judge what you see every single day. And this is where it gets really serious. This isn't just about feelings or unfair judgments. This has devastating real-world consequences. Data from India's National Family Health Survey shows that children in homes with single mothers have a 32% higher chance of being stunted. And that's no coincidence. It's directly linked to the incredible resource constraints and societal pressures that are placed on these women. Now, on the flip side, the struggle for single fathers is often a struggle of invisibility. There's actually very little data on their specific challenges in India. Because they're so much rarer, the support systems and even the research just tend to overlook them. Their journey can be just as lonely, but in a totally different way. So, okay, given this whole challenging landscape, where do we go from here? This brings us to our final section, rewriting the narrative. This is all about shifting from just seeing the problem to actually finding paths toward empowerment and connection for all single parents. And here's the good news. The definition of family in India is already changing. I mean, divorce used to be really rare, but as women gain more financial independence and more people live in nuclear families, single parenthood is becoming more common. There's more acceptance for remarriage, for blended families. And get this, a recent survey found that 81% of women would actually prefer to live single at some point. Society is definitely evolving. So what are the actual steps we can take? Well, first, we have to reframe the whole story. Single parenthood is not a deficit, period. Second, build social networks because community is absolutely key. Third, we have to get aware of our own biases and call them out when we see them. Fourth, we need policies that actually recognize and support single-parent families. And finally, and this is a big one for single parents themselves, it's about reclaiming their own story and living with dignity. Because ultimately, this is not a competition. It's not about who has it harder. Single motherhood and single fatherhood are just two different versions of courage. So the real question isn't about judging how they got there, but about how we as a society can support them moving forward. Let's stop comparing and let's start supporting.